In this video, I will cover Le Forestier's section on the history of the Illuminati system. This is book 4 of his phenomenal study, The Bavarian Illuminati, that was first published in 1914. I will be doing one more video on this subject, talking about the final part of Le Forestier's book, which is about the legend of the Illuminati and how it grew. Illuminism continued to spread among German Freemasonry via a skillfully devised method utilizing propaganda. Adolf Franz Friedrich Ludwig Baron von Knigge had succeeded in creating his version of the order, planting spies in Freemasonry and hiding behind that organization. A Congress that was first planned to take place in Wilhelmsbad on October 15, 1781, did not open until July 16, 1782. The strict observance was weak and in need of strengthening, mainly due to infighting. There existed contradictory opinions coming from various places in Europe. The majority of the members of the strict observance no longer believed themselves to be the legal heirs to the Templars. The problem was, because of this, the group no longer had a firm foundation for the existence of their society. The purpose of the Congress was to decide the fate of Templar Masonry. According to Le Forestier, two warring parties who fought in the shadows and, on the outside, pretended to study whether or not a reformed version of Templar Freemasonry should continue, or whether it should be ended together, formed. In reality, both were prepared to dispute its inheritance. The largest and most powerful of these members were the French Templars or the Martinists. This group was an offshoot of the strict observance, and it became known as the French strict observance. The French strict observance sought to pull the German strict observance down the road it had itself gone. That is, the benevolent Knights of the Holy City, which had replaced the French Templars, contained high grades that were above and beyond what regular adepts were taught. An additional 2 secret grades were added to the 6 high grades of the original rite by a man named Wilhelmsbad. This Wilhelmsbad had an ongoing connection with Ferdinand of Brunswick, who, as a member of the Rosicrucian Circle of Berlin, had developed quite an interest in things mysterious and extraordinary, including alchemy. Ferdinand had a close relationship with Charles of Hesse, who Le Forestier asserts was also intrigued by all things mystical. Le Forestier tells us that Charles of Hesse had been led to believe that certain elect could, during their lifetime, manage to establish direct communication with God and thereby obtain not only domination over natural forces, but also the power to interact with the spirit world. Charles was also influenced by Saint Germain, who spent the latter portion of his life at the prince's residence. Wilhelmsbad was able to play upon and influence both Ferdinand of Brunswick and Charles of Hesse. Ferdinand then gave his approval for the French strict observance to alter the Templar system. Ferdinand, as Grand Master of German Freemasonry, issued a pamphlet on June 18, 1781 that had this advice for members. I am convinced, my brothers, that beneath the true hieroglyphs and allegories of Freemasonry, with exception made for those referring only to the history of this society, are hidden certain truths and teachings, which, without going back into some kind of philosophical system, and are not any of the well-known frauds of this time, are only more certain, sublime, and consoling, and are perhaps more ancient than the majority of ordinary human sciences. Thus, disagreements between many of the parties involved in the so-called reform effort ensured that a simple return to English Freemasonry was not destined to be the conclusion of the attempt at reform of the order. Weishaupt summed it up as follows in a letter to Zwack, dated July 31, 1782. He said, "The parties present," meaning at the Congress, are 1. Duke Ferdinand of Brunswick, who will make any concession provided he remains the leader. 2. Prince Charles of Hesse, who has received a miserable religious system from a certain von Haugwitz. 3. A Frenchman, Wilhelmsbad, who seeks the triumph of his new system, erected in Lyon, and he wants that erected in Germany, he was saying. 4. An Italian deputy who always says yes. 5. Several Hermetic madmen. 6. A Rosicrucian spy. and a small herd of sensible men who wished nothing but to be led by the nose by the two princes. It was von Nigg that devised a campaign plan for the Order of the Illuminati regarding the Congress. He determined that the order would remain behind the scenes and secretly work to stir up trouble among the various groups. He thought this might turn some individuals against these forces and that he might then attract any discontents to the order. Working with a man named Ditfurth, he would manufacture propaganda from inside the Congress. This tactic was not very successful. According to a report dated August 7, 1782, the tactics of the Illuminati were exposed. Weishaupt wrote to Zwack and reported that the mystics who were the target of the propaganda circulated a pamphlet of their own at the Congress. It reported that the members of the Illuminati took an oath to carry out the most shameful of things and painted the order in a most dark and horrible light. Colonel de Viro returned from the Congress at Wilhelmsbad with the conviction that a conspiracy had been formed that was so well hatched and profound that it would be extremely difficult for religion and governments not to succumb to it. Le Forestier tells us that from the 3rd to the 13th session of the Congress, the subject of the debate was the question, who are we, and for how long have we existed? The conclusion that was reached was that there was nothing to prove direct descent from the Templars. The central leadership of the Duke of Brunswick was confirmed. However, Le Forestier comments that in reality, the Congress succeeded only in destroying everything that gave some consistency to the strict observance. In fact, he says it was dead as a doornail and its decomposition swift. As far as the Illuminati order was concerned, we can see that from the writings of von Nigg, it benefited from the results of the Congress. It sought to create a federation of lodges that was to look like an effort to realize the Masonic ideal of brotherhood by dissolving other systems and uniting under this federation. However, this was only a ruse to dominate Freemasonry and propagate Illuminism there in a quicker and more effective manner. Weishaupt wrote to his confidant Zwack on January 11, 1783 that, I am contemplating establishing a confederated system of lodges in a way to study the best subjects there and to cut the ground out from under the feet of the strict observance and bring about its ruin. If it succeeds, we will have everything we need. It is in our best interest to introduce an eclectic system into Freemasonry. The Theodore of Good Counsel Lodge was given the task of informing the Masonic world about the founding of a federation of lodges and the dissolution of the other systems. At the beginning of 1783, it issued a manifesto that had in fact been written by von Nigg. In it, von Nigg delivered a scathing critique of all the rival systems under the pretense of summarizing the history of Freemasonry. By the end of 1784, 2 years after the Congress of Wilhelmsbad had disbanded, the order had continued to recruit individual members. In Bavaria, recruitment continued to develop as well, and the new elector, Karl Theodor, who came to power in 1777, was made aware of the order. Illuminism made equal progress in other parts of the empire, including in Austria, Hungary, and Switzerland. The order reached its pinnacle by the end of 1784, however, and it contained within itself the seed of its own demise. It also had many enemies who were growing in strength and number. Two individuals who questioned the motives and methods of the order were Johann Caspar Lavater and Friedrich Nicolai. Von Nigg wrote to Lavater in 1783, attempting to persuade him to join the order. Lavater was a Swiss writer, Protestant pastor, and founder of physiognomics, the art of being able to judge character from a person's facial characteristics. Lavater was not impressed by von Nigg and expressed no desire to take part in the Illuminati order. He wrote this to von Nigg in response: I will hold until my dying breath that as a Christian and a psychologist, I have no faith in all the purely human works of long term, in these projects of reform, these artificial contraptions that fear the light, whose purpose is the betterment of humanity. So I feel myself obliged to predict that nothing practical will become of it. To try and mold men to be better and happier is itself a laudable intention that does honor to the hearts of those conceived it, but I have great doubts that this can ever be attained. Every society whose principles are good has, at the beginning, good as its goal. Then, over the long term, the goal becomes the increase of its membership, and this latter goal always eventually causes the first to be forgotten, and the spirit that initially animated the society disappears. Nikolai, well-known defender of the Enlightenment, should have been to the Illuminati a very desirable ally. However, he, like Lavater, was not persuaded. Le Forestier tells us that the fundamental idea of Illuminism, in other words, that men of genius and science could bring about revolutions of an incalculable scope in the interest of civilization and the happiness of humanity, provided they unite and pursue a goal that had been mutually agreed upon, appeared false to him on all points. He wrote to von Nigg on July 3, 1783, saying that required obedience did not please him, that he deemed it ill to use for good the methods the Jesuits used for ill, and that if unworthy men, these same Jesuits, managed to slip into the high grades, some very bad consequences could result, laudable as the intentions of the founder may be. Another enemy of the Illuminati order was a new party, especially in Berlin, formed by Rosicrucians. Rosicrucian leaders denounced the order in a pamphlet called The Illuminati Unmasked. By the end of 1784, Rosicrucian hostility toward the order had increased significantly. It is evident that the Illuminati was being criticized from many sources. However, internal dissensions further weakened the order considerably. The most serious of these were the disagreements that arose between Weishaupt and von Nigg. This erupted into open warfare between the two men and ended in von Nigg's desertion of the order. During this time, von Nigg wrote to fellow member Zwack a blistering critique of the Illuminati system and the character of its founder, Weishaupt. He even accused Weishaupt of the following treacherous behavior. And if, to top it all off, this wretch was in the pay of the Jesuits, despite all the insults he heaps upon them. Even though Weishaupt eventually emerged the winner in this struggle and was able to maintain his leadership of the order, nevertheless he feared that von Nigg would attempt to start his own rival society. Von Nigg, without informing Weishaupt, had recruited Ferdinand of Brunswick and entered into formal negotiations with the Duke. Weishaupt, for his part, established relations with the Duke of Saxe-Gotha in an attempt to ensure that the Duke would refuse to follow von Nigg and remain faithful to the order. Le Forestier tells us that by the month of July 1784, an agreement was signed between Weishaupt and von Nigg. Von Nigg agreed to return all the order's papers that were still in his possession, keep silent about all that had happened, not work against the order, and not name or compromise its leaders. In return, the order promised to deny all the false and unflattering rumors that had been spread about him. The document was signed by the Duke of Saxe-Gotha and Count Jean Martin von Stolberg. With this, Weishaupt was left as the sole and uncontested leader of the order. However, a new problem was looming on the horizon. An edict was issued on June 22, 1784, by Karl Theodor against all secret societies, and this would eventually lead to the end of the order. Legal proceedings began in Bavaria on October 10, 1786, against the Illuminati. It began with the Minervals of the Illuminati, who were supposed to observe discretion as part of their statutes. In this they failed, and they began to speak freely of the tasks that were imposed upon them. They were supposed to be engaged in the study of man, but to the public this merely translated as nothing more than snitching and spying. Le Forestier says that as the Minervals continued to boast, their remarks became even more inflammatory. They talked of how the motives of the order were to carry out everything useful to the society and reject anything that might harm it, but that slander, poisonings, murder, libel, betrayal, and rebellion, that all the biased men call crimes, were permissible and laudable when done for this purpose. They also said that all the kings and all the priests are rogues and traitors. Because of this, the public began to believe that the Illuminati were libertines who exercised control over various government bodies through occult influence, they were accused of having associates in all the criminal and civil courts. However, it was not just the gossip of the Minervals and the dissension between its leaders that contributed to the decline of the order. There were also Masons of other systems who had disdain for illuminated Freemasonry because of its success in recruiting candidates away from other lodges. Le Forestier tells us it was one of the order's own members who struck the fatal blow against it by sending the Dowager Duchess Maria Anna Joseph of Bavaria a detailed denunciation against the Illuminati Freemasons in October 1783. A copy of the document is located in the archives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Paris, with a note attached that says, "This piece was provided by a member of the Illuminati whose statutes horrified him and who resigned." This document revealed that there was in Bavaria, particularly in Munich, an extremely Masonic society that, cloaking itself in morality and love of humanity, was seeking to expel from the hearts of the young their attachment to the sovereign and their country, and further declared that patriotism was harmful to humanity and religion pure foolishness. It further read that these Freemasons held as a principle that the ends justify the means. It demanded blind obedience of their superiors' orders and educated the brothers to study each other reciprocally and reveal their defects and passions to the society. In addition, it said that adherents would act out of passion and not by reason, that suicide was permissible, and awarded itself the right of life or death over members of the society. It bragged of being able to commit murder with impunity and also sought to attract into their order doctors and pharmacists who knew how to poison enemies in such a way that they would gradually die of consumption. The Duchess worried that the Illuminati might be working with the Emperor of Austria, Joseph II. At a time when every Bavarian was either a Prussophile or an Austrophile, the Illuminati were definitely on the side of Austria. The Duchess sought to convince Frederick II of Prussia that the Illuminati might pose a threat to him and his throne. In addition, the Rosicrucians, enemies of the order, tried to draw the attention of the Crown Prince of Prussia to the alleged political intrigues of the Illuminati. It would be the Elector of Bavaria, however, who would eventually take action. On June 23, 1784, the following edict was published by Charles Theodore, Elector of Bavaria. Whereas all communities, societies, and brotherhoods founded without the due authorization of law and confirmation of the sovereign are illegal and forbidden as things that in and of themselves are suspect and dangerous. His Electoral Highness is determined not to tolerate within his states any such association, no matter what their denomination or internal constitution, and he commands quite categorically by the present writ all his subjects to withdraw from any secret association of assembly of this kind, and to do so all the more forcefully, as not only have these societies attracted the attention of the public and aroused its fears, but also His Highness will be heeding this as carefully with regard to his favor as in other matters, in faith of which the present edict of interdiction will be published for the governing of each and all by express order of His Electoral Highness. Once the Illuminati learned of this, they were forced to make a show of obedience to it. In Bavaria, the members of the order were told to suspend all work and correspondence, and the papers of the order were stored in safe locations or destroyed. However, some members of the order were quick to notice that the edict was stated in general terms and that it did not name the order specifically. Weishaupt was quick to point out that the edict might even work to the order's advantage if both Freemasons and Rosicrucians were also affected. It would only be necessary to wait it out, he advised. He wrote to one of his colleagues, "The legal proceedings for which we are the object are of no importance. The elector has declared to the Grand Marshal of the Court, as well as to others, that he was himself a Freemason, that he knew and respected all the systems, and that he had signed the rescript only to establish peace with his Chancellor and Father Frank. What weakness! In the meantime, this measure has had the best and most satisfying results for our society." In reality, Weishaupt took several measures which were designed to ensure that the apparently dissolved society would continue to operate behind the shadows. However, eventually the Duchess Maria Anna managed to convince the elector that the Illuminati continued to pose a substantial threat, and he agreed it would be necessary to open legal inquiries against the society. By March of 1784, the elector released another edict. In it, he stated that he believed the Illuminati still existed within his states in spite of his general interdiction. In the March edict, he stated that we deem that this society that has degenerated greatly from its original institution is too suspect, where religion is concerned from a social and political perspective, for us to tolerate it any longer within our states. We prohibit with the present writ, in absolute fashion, all meetings, collections, and enrollment of new members. The edict forced the Illuminati to suspend all work and correspondence and to dissolve their reading societies, as well as all relations with Freemasons, both inside and outside Bavaria. In effect, all ties that kept adepts of the order together were thus destroyed. Weishaupt knew that legal proceedings that would target the leaders of the order in Bavaria would follow, so he made plans to leave Ingolstadt under the cover of darkness. He wrote this to his friends in Athens: I wish your affairs to go better and the storm to calm now that I have sacrificed myself as the scapegoat. He announced that he had no intention of ever returning to Bavaria. As for its part, the government then opened a campaign against the Illuminati. Witnesses were summoned to give depositions, and these statements were made public. Especially of interest to the government was the order's doctrines regarding Christian morality and the Catholic religion. It also sought to establish that the Illuminati had disobeyed the Edicts of Interdiction. Le Forestier relays that on the evening of July 10, 1785, a parish priest named Jacob Lang, who was visiting Regensburg with Weishaupt, was struck by lightning while the two men were walking through the city. It was discovered that a certain number of papers were sewn into the clothing of the corpse of the priest, including an instruction that seemed compromising. The governor of Bavaria was made aware of the discovery and concluded that the order still existed and that the priest Lang had been sent to Silesia as a spy and a recruiter. The Illuminati remaining in Bavaria were finished. Weishaupt no longer had anything to fear from the proceedings because he was far away from Bavaria. He did, however, act to take revenge on the architects of the order's downfall and tried to raise the German opinion against the traitors and against the Bavarian government. The rumors he and his adversaries and supporters spread served to keep the government's suspicions high. Weishaupt even dared to refer to himself on July 19, 1796 as the alleged head of the Illuminati. In the month of October, the police managed to discover what they had long been looking for, most due to the fact that Zwack let his guard down. On October 10th, his papers were examined by a commission, and they discovered an entire packet of papers and insignia of the order beneath his wife's underwear. An order for his arrest was made. In those pages was found incriminating evidence that the order held the right of life and death over its members. It talked about the order's political victories, praise of atheism, a proposition for founding an order of women, and the description of an infernal machines for holding secret papers, another of an unpickable lock, 3 recipes for procuring an abortion, others for venereal herb and perfumes, others for counterfeiting seals. These papers served to offer proof in the eyes of the authority that the Illuminati were impious conspirators whose goal was to destroy religion and take control of the civil government, and that they were poisoners, forgers, and common criminals. The government then ordered the immediate dissolution of any still surviving reading societies that were set up by the order to disguise their lodges. The authorities believed that the ultimate goal of the Illuminati was to rule the world. Le Forestier says those authorities saw the basic premise of the system as one that sought to fill all lucrative and honorific places with Illuminati and to rid themselves of all those who prevented the realization of this goal. The Illuminati encouraged murder, adultery, prostitution, and sodomy, they thought. As a result, the elector decided to take the strictest measure possible against the Illuminati. On August 16, 1787, he published a decree that said that he orders it made a criminal offense regardless of person, honors, status, or position for anyone who is recruited in his states or without, for the recruiter to be executed by the sword, and the recruit to be condemned to the confiscation of all his property and banishment for life from the states of his electoral highness with an oath never to return. All Illuminati lodges were banned as well. As for Weishaupt, the Bavarian government continued to try and capture him. Weishaupt turned to Duke Ernest of Gotha for protection. To put him out of reach of the Bavarian government, the Duke made Weishaupt a member of his embassy in Regensburg. From then on, Weishaupt was in the service of the Duke of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg. The Elector of Bavaria took the news of the Duke's intervention on behalf of Weishaupt quite poorly. He wrote to the Duke trying to convince him that Weishaupt was guilty of incest and infanticide, and declared that no foreign protection would prevent his government from seizing Weishaupt whenever they could. Nevertheless, the Duke refused to hand Weishaupt over. Le Forestier reports that the Bavarian government's opinion of the Illuminati's guilt remained unshakable, though nothing in all of the investigations they carried out actually proved their crimes. Nowhere was there any proof discovered that the Illuminati had murdered or poisoned anyone, made any attempts on the life of a monarch, or practiced Socratic love. However, the government remained convinced the members of the order were dangerous criminals. The Elector of Bavaria saw the order as revolutionaries who advocated regicides. His phobia over them intensified, and he continued to take legal actions against them. Public opinion, however, was mostly favorable to the Illuminati. Le Forestier attributes this to the overwhelming role played in the proceedings against them by fanatic devotees and ex-Jesuits bitterly determined to destroy a society that had tried to spread the Enlightenment through Bavaria. It was this group of clerics, according to Le Forestier, who were largely responsible for the espionage organized against the Illuminati. They continued to feed the Elector absurd and defamatory stories about the order. Subsequently, all those suspected of being free thinkers were accused of Illuminatism and attacked for it. In August, a writ was issued which ordered all Bavarian bureaucrats to declare if they were Freemasons. This prompted one bureaucrat named Ignatius de Born to hand in his resignation and to write a letter in protest regarding the nature of the clerics' proceedings against the Illuminati order. In this letter, Born declared that, "I am an avowed enemy of ignorant monks, regarding them as the plague of human reason, and feel they should never be entrusted with the exclusive education of youth, that for me, Jesuitism and fanaticism have the same meanings as ignorance, superstition, and stupidity." Le Forestier concludes that the Bavarian government actually did the Order of the Illuminati a favor by relentlessly suppressing the group and subjecting the members to edicts and legal proceedings. In fact, he says the stupidity and relentless fury of the enemies of the Illuminati actually earned them sympathy, without which the system would have died of consumption due to the infighting between its leaders. Eventually, in 1799, an edict was issued that forbade all secret societies of any kind. As for Weishaupt, he spent the rest of his life in Gotha. Until the end of his days, he believed himself to be a benefactor of humanity, who the enemies of the human race had succeeded in banishing. I'll be doing one final video on this topic, and that will cover the Illuminati legend, the formation of the legend, Illuminism in the French Revolution, the great epics, the legend in history and fiction, and the police legend and the resurrection of the order. See you next time.